On today's episode of Fall Forward, we're speaking with the European head of e-commerce at PepsiCo, Celso Shimabukuro. We explore how to balance innovation with the risk of disruption, how Pepsi 4x'd growth while maintaining a human-centered leadership approach, and how other C-suite leadership functions can support digital leaders on their journey to create new experiences for their consumers. Join us as we navigate the world of digital with one of the largest CPG brands. Celso, it's wonderful to have you here on the podcast. Welcome to the Fall Forward podcast. It's always lovely to be speaking to leaders across the globe, and you're joining us today from Geneva. Is that correct?
Yes, that's it.
Wonderful. And Celso, I'm going to say your surname, and you can connect me if I get it wrong. Shimabukuro. Is that correct? Shimabukuro. And you have, I'd love to learn, Celso, about your background firstly, for our members and for our listeners to learn who you are, what you do, and then we can delve into our conversation today, which is all about digital and e-commerce and the like. So welcome, Celso. Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yes, absolutely. First and foremost, thank you so much, Stephen, for having me, for inviting me. I'm Celso Borges Shimabukuro. So as you guessed, part Japanese, part Portuguese, 100% Brazilian, as I like to say. I've been leading e-commerce for PepsiCo Europe for 4 years now. I've been with the company for 8 years. I have a 3-chapter career, and then my last chapter, which is the current chapter, if you will, is the corporate one. It has 3 sub-chapters. So the first chapter, I started out my career very entrepreneurial. I worked on a bunch of startups and a venture capital fund in Brazil. You know, trying to become a millionaire at a young age and failing miserably, but learning a lot and having a lot of fun creating businesses from scratch. It's a very rewarding experience. The second chapter is strategy consulting. So I worked with Accenture strategy for almost 5 years. And then the third chapter is the corporate chapter, which has 3 sub-chapters, if you will. The first one was the strategy piece. So it was the transition from consulting to strategy in corporate. So I worked for Samsung Electronics and J&J in Brazil and Latin America with the strategy function. Then the second chapter is the revenue management chapter. So I led revenue management for J&J and PepsiCo, as I told you. And now my third and current chapter, which is e-commerce and digital, which is the gig that I have now, and I love every minute of it.
And I suppose, Celso, the e-commerce and digital over the last, 15, 20 years of that part of your career, is arguably one of the most exciting places in technology and innovation that we've seen, because if we think about the transitions that have happened in that period, what excites you about that space? What excites you about e-com? What excites you about CPG? Why be doing what you're doing and leading from where you are?
Yeah, it was such a great experience and a great opportunity to be where I am right now, right? I arrived here in Geneva in 2020, so October 2020, so in the middle of the pandemic. And of course, it was ominous times, but also exciting times to be in e-commerce. CPGs are laggard in e-commerce adoption, as you know, Steve. So we had a lot of work to do, right? And only one direction to go, right? Which was growing and very fast and as I like to say, outrageous growth for the industry standards. What excites me on top of being able to drive this transformation is that digital commerce and e-commerce, it is just so dynamic, right? So I like to say that I'm always wary about so-called e-com experts because it changes so fast. So I like the expression e-com practitioners, right? So you're actually in it, doing it, learning, testing, learning, and because the space changes so fast. So I love this dynamic aspect of of digital commerce, but it is applicable to digital in general, right? As you know.
And I suppose with that in mind, I think, across the broader digital transformation conversation, I mean, personalization, CX, data, of course, the role of managing
Yep.
and utilizing data, I think have all been themes that across the board are interesting. I'd love to perhaps pause on a couple of those with you, Celso, and just understand, both with your PepsiCo hat on and with your just leadership hat on, what are you seeing as kind of those key areas of focus, and I suppose also then like looking forward, what's next in terms of the big
Yes.
opportunities for you around e-com and digital transformation in that space?
Yes. No, that's a great question, right? And if I had the right answer, I would say, but I'll tell you what's hot on my mind right now. So data, of course, data and analytics is the basis for everything. If you don't get your data right, the ingestion and the digestion, if you will, everything else is going to crumble later, right? So I think that you need to get this data foundation right first and foremost. The analytics behind it's evolving so fast, right? With AI and all that good stuff. So the tools that we have today are definitely going to be obsolete in a very short time span. So we need to keep investing and developing these capabilities to be able to keep updated, right? So I think the data science and analytics aspect of it is crucial, and the rise of AI is going to power this transformation. Then going more front end, if you will, there's a hot topic right now for us is retail media networks, and trying to make sure to separate the excitement from the actual returns. We have, of course, a lot of things going on with different partners, and the results are very encouraging. The full funnel approach really brought to life. The partners are evolving as well, right? With on-site assets, off-site, in-store assets as well, on top of online. So the whole space is very interesting. We need to keep testing and learning, investing and making sure we're winning that space as well. And then there's looking ahead. I think the AI rise and evolution is gonna step change a number of capabilities. One that I find particularly exciting is revenue management. So as you know, I led revenue management before, and this experience in digital makes me see a whole new layer of value to be captured. Of course, PepsiCo, as it's a very important capability for us, revenue management for the offline world, but digital brings so many possibilities to untap more value. And I think it's as much as the playbooks were developed for offline first, now we're applying those principles to online. Now online, with these tools that we're talking about, superior tools for analytics, powered by AI and so on and so forth, will now bring benefits from what we learn online back to the broader business. And I think we're just starting this journey, scratching the surface there. I think this can unlock tremendous value for the entire system, right? For the consumers as well. With you mentioned personalization and scale, but for the industry, for the CPGs, and of course for our retail partners as well.
What's in your view, Celso, driving the change around, I suppose, from your perspective, kind of the CPG space at the moment? What are the big pushes that you're seeing? Because we're seeing everyone talking about, yes, let's unlock value with data, let's unlock value with AI, but in truth, a couple of our guests and experts have said to us, well, look, you have to still have the right use case. You have to still have a reason to apply it. So I think it's always useful to explore and say, well, what is that driver? What's the use case, or what's the reason for you? And I think for those maybe who don't necessarily understand CPG or revenue management, from that, perhaps tell us a little bit about that, and tell us about why leaders should necessarily care about that challenge and overcoming it.
For sure, and I love that question, because I think many times we just do things because it's the buzz of the moment, or we do it because we know we need to be doing it. And I don't know if you read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or something, but there is this quote of begin with the end in mind, right? And that's the use case thing that you just alluded to. In digital and in analytics and whatnot, you should always solve a problem, a real life problem of the organization, right? I think the power of analytics starts not with the perfect analysis or the perfect data cleanse or whatever. It actually starts with a real life problem, execution problem that you need to solve, right? So I think the use cases for improving execution are highly valuable to us, and revenue management enters in that space. Revenue management is has 3 major dimensions, and they are interconnected and they overlap. It all starts with the pricing, right? With the pricing to consumer, in that sense. So the willingness to pay of the consumer, you need to understand it. You need to understand how elasticities behave. You need to understand how your categories interact with other categories. So you enter this world of cross elasticities. And this is all very complex and very granular, because you ideally need to understand this on the SKU level. So no one can digest this with Excel, and believe me, I tried many times. And of course, you do what you can, right? And you do approximations and whatnot. But now we're coming to a point where the analytics technology is going to allow us to really get that granular, and really, in the world of digital commerce, you can really see elasticities behaving in a more timely manner, eventually even real time. The moment you touch the price, you're going to have intended or unintended consequences in your mix, and you need to adjust your trade terms accordingly, right?
Yeah.
This new, how can I say, level of granularity can unlock tremendous value for CPGs, retailers, and consumers, I think, as well.
You mentioned something there which kind of reminded me of a conversation I had at a recent member session here in London, and one of our members said that, as a leader, we need to stop now being the ones who provide the answer, and actually now, with access to data and algorithms and models, actually be the ones to ask the right questions. And so with that in mind, Celso, how do you ask the right questions as leaders when you are, because you can ask data, the same sets of data, different questions, and get very different answers. So how are you prioritizing the strategy around this, ensuring that you're asking the right questions, building the right digital framework in order to navigate to obviously an improved revenue management position? How do you do that?
Well, that's a great question. I really believe leadership is only effective if it is by permission, right? So if people don't willingly follow you, or a vision that you crafted, or you crafted with your people, which is actually ideal and better, you won't get followership. You will only get, I don't know, compliance or obedience, right? So to me, it's always about crafting a compelling view of the future, ideally together with your people, and then setting out about making it a reality. So if you're able to rally the troops behind a common ambitious vision of the future that excites everyone, and it's clear that it's going to impact the business, but also it's going to have a clear reward or has a clear purpose for each and every individual on the team. That's first and foremost for me, right? So in a sense, in terms of asking the big questions, is understanding what excites you and your team, and in at the same measure, what's something that will impact the business in a positive manner, in a long-lasting manner. What is the legacy that you and your team want to leave behind, right? I would always, and I have always started with that, right? So having this discussion and painting this compelling view of the future, I think that's first and foremost, right? And then specifically for us, and talking about use cases and whatnot, or starting with the end in mind, we set out our journey here in e-commerce in Europe. We had two major things we wanted to do. We wanted to drive outrageous growth, as I joked with you, right? And in a pace of growth that's so fast and so different from the traditional parts of the business, that we would become this growth engine for the total business. And on the other side is delivering the capabilities that we needed to win, not only in digital commerce, but capabilities that would help the broader business in the long run, right? So all these data and science capabilities that we're building, they can benefit the broader business as well, right? Because we're understanding how the consumer behaves in the digital space, and the consumer is one, right? It doesn't behave or thinks differently when he's scrolling or when he's not, right?
We think we're all individuals, but we're not. When I was reading, Celso, about you beforehand, what came through quite clearly was you talk about 3 core values as a leader: integrity, excellence, and compassion. And I think you articulated those a little bit, but they are 3 human qualities. Why is that so important to you as a leader, that you lead with the human side of leadership?
If I am to boil down everything I learned about business in my career, Steven, 2 things is people and profits, right? That's what you need to do as a leader. And if you find good people and you take good care of them, they will take care of the business and the profit will come, right? I firmly believe that. So I think the ultimate, most important task or duty of a leader is looking out for their people. And I think in the corporate world, sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think we need to take care of the business. And as leaders, the more you grow, the less you can individually take care of anything, right? The more you need to inspire and empower people and secure resources and of course coach and guide, but in a large extent is also about getting out of the way, right, and letting people do what they do best. So to me, having human values and having always this human aspect to leadership is just the only way to go about it, right? Leadership is about people. It's about them. It's not about you, right? I think folks sometimes confuse this, and they think leadership is about the characteristics of this one great fellow, or some leaders think very highly of themselves, but it's really about how good of how well do you take care of your people, I guess.
Yeah. I think you so nicely articulate the people and profit balance, because they are one and the same, 2 sides of the same coin, I suppose. And I suppose a follow-up question to that then, Celso, is that when we first spoke, you mentioned around obviously this focus on driving PepsiCo's growth here in Europe, and specifically you mentioned the I think it was the doubling of your team, the tripling of your revenue, and quadrupling of your profits. Is that right?
Yes. 2x, 3x, 4x.
2x, 3x, 4x. Tell us about this. Tell us about what you mean by the 2x, 3x, 4x, and then I'd love to explore the kind of some of the hows in terms of the leadership approaches that you had to achieve that. That would be lovely to hear.
Yes, absolutely. So 2x is all about the talent, as I told you. When you're about to make a big change in any organization or any function in the corporate world, I always think about 3 dimensions, right? So the talent, the people, the governance processes, the ways of working, if you will, and the tech to support, right? And that's exactly what we've done here in our journey in digital commerce in Europe. So we started step changing the talents. We brought expert talent where expert talent was needed. We brought seniority, more seniority where more seniority was needed. And we needed more boots on the ground, plainly and simply, right? So that's the 2x. We doubled the size of our community. The 3x is the growth. So we needed to deliver significant growth. So we tripled the top line of the business in this journey, and we beat the market while doing so, which is always nice. And the 4x is the profitability, right? The profitability is essential to make it sustainable. So the 4x means we grew the profit pool more than the revenue pool, which means we're more profitable now, even though we invested a lot along the journey than we were in the beginning of the journey, right? Which is also very nice. We're very proud of that. And it's not usual, right, for a high growth and high investment area, and for e-com, for CPGs, right, to become more profitable in this growth spur.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that exact question, because CPG historically doesn't grow at those rates, and it definitely doesn't grow its profit at those rates. So for leaders who are listening and watching this, Celso, what would you say were the fundamentals to making that happen? What would be transferable for our members listening to this today?
Yes. So very obvious key success factor is the talent, right? So we picked and chose the best possible talents to bring to our team, right? And we took our sweet time, in a sense, right? So we were very deliberate and very careful to try and find the best talent, and I'm proud of our team very much, right? So we brought very, very good talent, and it all starts with that stakeholder management. So that compelling vision of the future must be compelling to your stakeholders as well. So of course, if me and my team were excited about it, but our bosses and stakeholders weren't, nothing would have happened, right? It's very rare that you have something in the corporate world that's not a team sport, right? So we needed support from supply, from the broader marketing team, from finance, and so on and so forth, right? And of course, we were asking for a ton of money to hire all this talent and to build all these capabilities. So as we were painting our own version of this compelling vision, we also painted a compelling vision to our decision makers, stakeholders, gatekeepers, and resource holders, right? So that was a massive key success factor as well. Having the support of the top management and the investments that we needed, definitely critical. I think that's also very applicable to any area and other industries. Also, the cultural challenge is a lesson learned. Maybe we tried too much or a little too soon to shake up the culture of the company, right? Digital is very experimental. We're very agile, test and learn, fail fast, iterate, and move on. And I think we try to infuse that in the organization, and we still do try to do that to shake up the company's culture. Uh, but it's gotta be done in a more deliberate and maybe uh, in a more paced manner, if you will. I guess the common applicable dimension to any business is you got to be mindful of the culture, right? What are you trying to change and why, and then be very deliberate about how you're gonna go and change it.
You touch on one of the learnings, and in fact, that was going to be my next question for yourself. So obviously,
Yeah.
the theme of the podcast is all about falling forward or learning from your mistakes. How do we as leaders create an environment where leaders can fail just as much as our teams can? Because in this environment, you mentioned it's important to do so. What were some of the key I suppose, lessons learned, failures, I suppose, in the process to getting to that 4x profitable growth?
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing there were quite a few along the way.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. I remember the first forecast we did, right? So we want to hit this big number, and we did the beautiful cause of change, right? The building blocks to get to this big number, and we're getting there, but the shape of the building blocks is completely off at this point, right? So I think that's definitely a learning, because, and it's very inherent to digital, right? Fail fast, move on, iterate. So we did iterate the plans all the time, right? So listen, this is not getting traction. Let's pivot in terms of sub channels, customers that we felt were going to be big and weren't, or some that we didn't see and they exploded. The rise and fall of quick commerce, right, Stephen? This was something that impacted the shape of our building blocks as well. But we kept agile, right? We kept, okay, so let's reallocate resources here and there. Let's react quickly to the market changes. So that's definitely a learning. You gotta keep your options open. You gotta keep agile. You gotta adjust the trajectory as fast as you can. You can't die holding to an original plan that doesn't make sense anymore, right? So that's a massive learning. On the cultural note, we started touching about this. You cannot underestimate how important is the cultural change, right? So that's a massive learning as well. The resource sufficiency is also extremely important for digital. You got to be mindful of the differences in the dynamic of the offline business and the digital business, because we're used to doing things in CPGs, and I think that's true for other industries as well. But for instance, the we call the marketing investments here A&M, right? Advertising and marketing investments. So this line of the P&L is always the first to suffer when things get squeezed or there's pressure on the P&L. So that's the first thing to go, right? But in offline, if you reduce the A&M, nothing happens on your racks or on your shelves, right? Our product's still there; they're gonna still turn. And in digital, if you reduce that, it's instantly. It's almost like removing the virtual shelf,
Yeah.
the digital shelf. And I had to educate folks on this, right? We can't do that. We need to be always on. So we had to fight for sufficiency for our digital investments, but this was very different from the way the our stakeholders used to think about the business. So for digital, this is always very important to translate, I guess, business fundamentals to digital, right? And how they're different and how you need to adjust to be successful online.
I I love how you've talked about there kind of the people side of the challenge that sits behind that, because I think right from the beginning here you said like it's about having the right people in order to deliver the right vision. And I think the lessons that you are learning around culture and pace, and also understanding that it's okay to learn and fail in that piece, and then apply those learnings is really an important lesson for people to take note of. I suppose thinking about your leadership journey, Celso, then, I often like asking this question because most leaders have arrived at that point because of things that have happened in their career. And I'd love to delve with you a little bit about, well, in your career, what's that moment or that one lesson that always sits with you that you carry with you as a key failure or learning lesson that you had that almost sits on your shoulder to remind you to keep moving forward? Is there something you could think of there that would stand out?
I failed so many times, right? I screwed up the keys to getting more rights than wrongs. But I'm trying to think if there's one when things are going well and you're getting all this praise or recognition or results. You start thinking maybe too highly of yourself, and then someone or something needs to calibrate your ego. And I think this is a cosmic thing because this happened more than once in my career, right? So you get good results, you get excited, you start to think, oh, I'm invincible or whatever, or I'm more than I really am, right? I'm just a guy, right? Trying to do my best. And the universe or whatever you believe in conspires to calibrate your ego. So if there's something that I learned throughout my journey and I try to keep myself grounded on is you gotta keep humble, right? You gotta always keep humble. And I translate that this humbleness in trying to first not take myself too seriously, not think too highly of myself, but also keep hungry for learning.
Yeah.
Right. And I think this whole journey in digital commerce was very, very humbling, Steve, because I worked 2 times in ecom. One was, I don't know, 20 years ago when the dot-com bubble crashed. So I'm a dinosaur of e-commerce back to a new game, right? And it was, of course, a completely different ball game, and I had to learn everything. And that's why I told you I'm suspicious of whoever calls themselves nowadays an e-com expert. You can at best be a practitioner now, because if you're not, in 6 months, 12 months, you're going to be obsolete again. And this digital commerce experience is helping me for sure keep myself grounded, humble, and hungry.
I think that's such a lovely learning lesson for us all to be reminded of, Celso. I think I was actually talking to a member recently, and we were having this conversation about what got you here won't get you there when it comes to leadership, and that is becoming a more and more relevant because of the pace of change. And you mentioned just then the pace of change, which you can't have the answers to all the questions any longer. And I think the way you articulate that, being humble, being open to those failures, those learnings, and always learning, I think is inspirational. So I 100% agree with that. What excites you most, Celso, looking forward into the future from your position within PepsiCo? What excites you most?
Yeah. So we're living in a time that is incredibly exciting. The tech evolution, the pace of evolution, and these exponential curves that we see over and over in different tech fields, right? The good old Moore's law. I think we're living the vortex of those curves, and this is extremely exciting to me, right? Looking back and seeing how fast the world has changed the tech and everything else, and thinking that it never has changed so fast before, but looking ahead, it never will change this slow again. So I think living in this moment is incredibly exciting, and being able to work in the tech space, in the digital space, in this moment in time in history is, to me, is super exciting.
Where does PepsiCo go from here in terms of brand? You see lots of brands, some CPGs now talking about direct to consumer a lot more than they've ever talked about it before. If I think about Nike going through a real learning journey on direct to consumer at the moment, is that on the PepsiCo agenda? Or I suppose, yeah, what is next from that perspective in a PepsiCo place?
Yeah, D2C is, I think, and it's similar to our e-com journey here as well, Steve, because PepsiCo is a very sales-driven company, sales-oriented company. So we used to think about e-com and D2C, for that matter, as sales channels. And I think the big pivot in the thinking that we need to do, and we're going about doing it, is reframing e-com into digital commerce, into a broader than sales capability or state of mind, even if I am to get philosophical, because it's not only a sales channel. Of course, it is a sales channel as well, but it is a consumer engagement channel as well, an innovation platform, a capability building platform. So it has a much broader impact on the business than just the sales that we drive online. And in that sense, D2C to me is a necessity, in the sense that we need to establish a dialogue with our consumers. CPGs, and PepsiCo is no exception in that matter, from the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years, has been very transactional in the engagement with the consumer, and even with the retailers, for that matter, right? We negotiate the terms, we sell according to those terms for a year or so, and then we negotiate the terms again, and so on and so forth. And then with the consumer, it's like, I'll do the brand building, but the transactions happen on the retailer, and I'm not even aware of what's going on there. And then digital tools, our discussion earlier on analytics, this changes this dramatically, right? So I think PepsiCo is, and all CPGs are realizing now, there's tremendous value in this dialogue, in learning more about the consumer, engaging directly. And I think that's the only way for brands to stay relevant, to stay top of mind, and to keep their ability to command price, to command premiums and whatnot, right? To drive willingness to pay and capture the value that comes from this willingness to pay.
Do you know, I honestly hadn't thought about it from that perspective, Celso, in terms of that conversation that you can have with your consumers, which for such a long period of history, CPG just haven't been able to do that because you are always distant from your end customer. I'm excited to hear and see, perhaps then over the next few years, what value that unlocks for us as consumers, because what value can PepsiCo and others bring to us that perhaps we didn't realize because of that conversation that can now be had more directly with us. Interesting view, and yes, it's not just about selling, and maybe that's a lesson for our friends at Nike at the moment, you know, because I think they very much have prioritized the D2C channel from a sales perspective, but maybe aren't thinking about it in the area that you've just talked about as much, which is about having a conversation and a relationship with your customer, which for them was a brand value forever. Just perhaps it was, you know, so it's a really interesting point. Thank you for that. We always ask our members to provide questions for upcoming guests. So we'll put you on the spot, Celso. And your question from our membership is, how does PepsiCo balance the need for innovation with the risk of disrupting its core business? which I think is something that's topical for many industries and many leaders right now.
Yeah. Well, I love this question, right? And I think there's a quote from, I think Steve Jobs said something about that. If you don't disrupt your business from within and from a position of advantage, someone else will, right? So I think we are the category leaders. We're the category definer with many brands. We have the duty to move the category ahead. So if we don't disrupt the industry, either no one else will, or someone will blindside us, and we don't want that, of course. So we need to be at the forefront here, and I think that's our thinking, right?
We chose that question. The other question that the members put forward was, does Celso prefer Pepsi or Coke? But we can't put you on the spot and ask you that question, Celso. So we won't.
I will. If you cut me open, I will bleed blue. That's what I have to say.
And I have to say, I've really enjoyed the rebrand over the last period.
Oh, it's amazing. It is amazing. Yeah.
A really smart balance between bringing the heritage of the brand forward but also bringing the modernity of it as well, which
yes.
I think.
Of course, I'm biased, but I'm loving it.
A big part of what we do here at Blend is helping leaders from around that boardroom table get a better understanding of what others, when they're looking across the round boardroom table, are thinking about and prioritizing. And so for our members, our leaders who are listening to this, who are maybe in finance or operations or maybe HR roles, when they're looking across the boardroom table and looking at digital and e-com, what should they be thinking about? How can they better partner with your area of the business, Celso?
That's a brilliant question, and I love it. It touches the cultural discussion we were talking about before. I think there's a pace of business, a momentum pace, or a dynamic that's the usual dynamic of businesses for most CPGs and big companies, blue chip companies, and so on and so forth. That I believe it's similar. The good old business as usual type of things. You got to be mindful that the digital folks, they need to move faster because their competition moves faster. Consumers expect more velocity online than offline. So they need to change and move things fast. So please be gentle with them and try and be mindful of that need. And try and help them move fast within your organizations, right? As I said, I think everything is a team sport to a certain extent in big corporate. And the digital team, the digital guys, the digital commerce guys, they need the support of the broader business to try and move fast and win in the digital space, but also there are these values that are very critical to winning in digital that can help the broader business future-proof itself, right? We touched about the test and learning mindset, the agility mindset. These things can benefit the broader business as well. So I would urge you as business partners from finance, supply, other functions, to keep an open mind, be gentle with their digital anxiety, if you will, and help them throughout the journey.
That sounds again like a human-centered approach, Celso, which I love and has come through so clearly in our conversations today about how you approach leadership and how you and your team clearly have prioritized people along with digital. And trying to bring those two together. So I've really enjoyed that. Lastly, Celso, one of the things that we love to do for our members is to ask you to share with us a recommendation, something that is important to you maybe as a person or professionally that you do or that you would recommend to others to consider in their life or in their working life? So I don't know if you have something in mind.
As a leader, if you need to take good care of your people, first and foremost, you need to take good care of yourself. No one can take care of anyone if they're not well themselves, right? So my recommendation would be, in this age of anxiety, depression are endemic, we gotta take care of ourselves, right? And the way I do that is I have 3 very practical things that I do that I would like to share. Is I run, I read, and I play with the kids. So that's what I do to try and take care of myself.
Thank you, Celso. And I think prioritizing your well-being is often something that as leaders we don't do. I think we do for our teams, but we don't do enough for ourselves. So it's always good to call that out. You've made me think about something. I think there's definitely a movement for leaders to try and be better at that. I think our generation of leaders historically isn't as good at that. I think the younger generations, if I think about in our organization, they are prioritizing that balance or that focus on that well-being, both mentally and physically, a lot more. That also is driving a change in consumer behavior. So how is, I suppose we'll go full circle here, how then from your focus on yourself and the changes in terms of how we're seeing the younger generations interact digitally and also from a well-being perspective, how is that changing the agenda in your digital approach, just to complete our circle?
Yes, and that's a great question as well, because taking care of yourself, and to your point, taking care of your teams, I feel the generational change more acutely in digital commerce, because we are by nature a younger and more tech-savvy cohort than the broader organization. So I need to be an internal champion for those things as well, right? To your point on digital is always on, is 24/7 available. And that's good and that's bad, right? For your business is good because your brand is always there and you can always be selling and whatnot. But from the health and well-being perspective, it's bad, right? And you as a leader need to be very mindful of an email that you send or a message that you send at the time that you send, and what this can have, what impact this can have on someone else's life and well-being, right? Even if you tell them not to reply, they might be thinking about that. It takes mind space, and this can be harmful in the long run and whatnot. But it's an example of what you said, right? How can we be mindful of the transformation that we have, right, going on? Which I absolutely agree, by the way. The new cohort is smarter that way.
I love that they're smarter that way, by the way. I think it will drive us all forward and hopefully end up
I agree.
And I hope that this age of unlocking the value that exists in all the data that we hold will make our lives far more balanced, because hopefully we can get machines and robots doing the lower value tasks, and we can focus on the beach. No, I mean higher value tasks, Celso.
Well, what do you mean? Beach is a high value task.
They are a high value task, absolutely. Celso, thank you so much. We've loved having you here on the Fall Forward podcast. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for sharing with us some of your views around how you've led that really exciting growth in the revenue and but in hand with the team and the focus on people and doing that in a healthy way. I've really enjoyed our conversation, so thank you for that. And we very much look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure, Stephen.
Thanks, Celso. Make sure you subscribe to the Fall Forward channel so you don't miss any new episodes. I'll see you soon.